Hello and welcome. This is the New Mexico State Drought Status Briefing on Thursday, February 1st, 2018. I'm Royce Fontenot. I'm the Senior Service Hydrologist here at the National Weather Service Forecast Office in Albuquerque. So let's hop right on in. Drought continues to expand over New Mexico. 100% of the state is in some category on the U.S. Drought Monitor. As of this morning, the current issuance, about 94% of the state's in moderate or severe drought, with about 68% of the state in severe drought. A small area of extreme drought has entered the state in Catron County, and snowpack is still significantly below normal for all basins. And a highlight to this is time for significant snowpack accumulation in our mountain areas is starting to run out. So let's look at the current drought monitor. There's the drought monitor as of January 30th, released Thursday, February 1st. And there you can see most of the state is in that darker orange color of D2, which is severe drought. You can see over in Catron County that red color, that's a little bit of extreme drought that's come into the state. So total about 94% of the state now is in some category of drought. Only that extreme southeast is still in that abnormally dry category. And you can see there's a little bit in the northeast part of the state up near Raton that's still considered in moderate drought D1. So let's pull out a little bit and look at the bigger perspective. This is the nationwide drought monitor. And kind of the two things I want to point out here is, one, if you look at our neighbors to the north in Colorado, that D2 has now expanded into the upper Rio Grande Basin. So that's matching conditions that we're seeing here in the lower Rio Grande Basin. And also in Arizona, Texas, and Oklahoma, and southern Kansas, we're starting to see that D3 drought come in. That's where we've got that little touch of dollop of D3 here in New Mexico has come over mainly from that area in the Arizona side. So certainly something to watch, when you look at the regional perspective, kind of what the tendency of the drought is right now. 1 week and 6 month change. So on the left, this is the 1 week change where we were last week on the drought monitor. And you can see those degradations. Gray means no change, nothing's changed there. For most of the central part of the Rio Grande Valley, parts of the Pecos, that area is degraded one category. So that's gone from that D1 into D2 drought. And then you can see over Catron County, that's where it's gone from that D2 into D3. So that's kind of our 1 week change. But taking a look at the right, that's the 6 month change. So back in August 2017 was the first time that New Mexico had not had any designations on the drought monitor since the first issuance of the drought monitor in late 1999. So it just shows you over 6 months how quickly things have changed, that the entire state has had some sort of degradation in the drought category, as we've had these dry conditions build. Quick review just of the drought severity classifications there. Won't linger too much on this. You can see our first drought status update to have a little bit better description on there, but kind of where we are. So I want to highlight on this one that extreme drought. What's some of the possible impacts? Typically nationwide, when we talk about extreme drought, we start looking at major crop and pasture losses, looking at widespread water shortages or restrictions. Now, for New Mexico, of course, this has been a dormant period. So at this point, we're seeing more just that precipitation. Those long-term values are really just that low. They're into that D3 category. So we're not seeing those impacts yet, but those are possible impacts if that trend continues. So let's look at the last 30 days percent normal. Again, this is a product from the National Weather Service River Forecast Centers. This uses rainfall and rain gauge information. Those white areas are areas where no precipitation has fallen. Again, most of the state is well below normal. We have had some systems over the last 30 days through the month of January that's helped some. So you're seeing that in there. The other thing is this is the percent of normal for those 30 days. So climatologically, for a lot of areas of the southwest of New Mexico, this is the drier time of the year. So, even though we're very little precipitation, we still have several stations out there that are nearing 100 or over 100 days of no recorded precipitation. These numbers are a little inflated, and we'll talk about that some more, meaning they're a little deceptive. It's still bone dry. It's just at this point, this time of the year normally, you don't have much precipitation, so even small amounts shows up as a higher percentage of normal. But when you start seeing that 60-day, and then as we go into the 90-day, you'll see that red color, that less than 25% expand. Again, particularly east of the Central Mountains and over a good chunk of the western third of the state, you'll see that trend. And then going to 90 days, that's probably more representative of really where we are percent of normal as a season. Matter of fact, currently Albuquerque, for example, has the driest water year to date. Water year is October 1st through September 30th. So it's got the Sunport is seeing the driest water year on record. So certainly, again, this should be no surprise what we're seeing, just reconfirming where we are precipitation-wise. So I mentioned this on the first drought status meeting. This is the standardized precipitation index. This is a way of kind of comparing apples to apples statistically when you're looking at rainfall. So you're comparing a weather station's climate record to itself, not trying to compare it to Florida or New England or some other place. So that 30-day SPI, so the warmer colors, the oranges and red are below normal, meaning drier conditions. The greens and blues and purples are wetter. That 30-day normal SPI in the top left corner, again, it's somewhat of a deceptive number, and that's kind of a key point here. The climatology is, in that 0 to -1 for a good chunk of the state, and part of that is that this is normally the drier season of the year. So, zero precipitation or very small amounts isn't as big of a deviation from normal. But as we start looking at the 60-day and the 90-day, particularly the 90 and 120-day, you start seeing that when you look at the longer-term trend, particularly the 90-day, which is a little more representative of longer cycles agriculture, some water supply. That's really where it stands out. And this is all based off of rain gauge data. That's really where you start seeing that well below normal precipitation. 120 days, you can still see some of that well above normal precipitation there from early October, late monsoon event over the eastern plains. But really the story of the drought so far is that 60, but particularly that 90 and 120 days, depending on where you are, precipitation totals of just statistically being well below normal. Let's talk about snowpack. We had a few systems come through in January, really didn't do much for our snowpack. Look at the right graphic, the upper Rio Grande, only about 35% of normal as of February 1st for the entire basin, a snow water equivalent. Same thing over in the San Miguel, Dolores, Animas, and San Juan, about 36% of normal. And then taking a look at the basins here in New Mexico, it's even more bleak, where you're looking at the Rio Chalma as the wettest at 32% and the Rio Hondo down to 3%. Pecos River's finally on the graphic. They've got a little bit of snow in the upper part of the basin. Now, one thing I want to point out here, and I mentioned this in the very first slide, we're only now, as of the date of this recording, February 1st. We still have 2 more months of possible time to get snow. However, when you look at climatology and you look at how the basins operate, typically the peak snowpack when it comes to water equivalent in the upper Rio Grande, for example, is around April 1st, that first part of April. It's higher elevation, it's further north, it's cooler. For the lower part of the Rio Grande, so for this, that's the Rio Chalma, the Jemez, the Sangre de Cristos, that peaks out that first part of March. So statistically, we really only have about 30 days left as of the date of this recording for the lower Rio Grande to catch up to normal. I did some back of the envelope calculations last week, and to get to that, we need about 270% or so of normal precipitation through the end of the first part of March in the lower Rio Grande Basin, basically the New Mexico side, to get to that normal. Impossible? No, it's not. Highly unlikely, yes, especially with La Nina. And we're seeing the same thing on the upper Rio Grande. You need about 215% of normal. So are we going to continue to get snow through April? Sure. Systems, that's climatologically not implausible. That's kind of normal. The problem is we normally get a large percentage of our snowpack early in the season. So, while we'll see some additional systems, the likelihood that we're going to catch up to a normal snowpack year is diminishing by the day. So let's look at stream flow. This is the 28-day average from our partners in the U.S. Geological Survey. Highlights here, I discussed this on the previous one. For the most part, a lot of the basins are still doing well stream flow-wise, percent of normal, due to the really great runoff we had last year in those late season monsoons. So streams are still running in a lot of areas, and particularly the regulated basins are doing pretty well. Your eyes should be drawn here to the darker reds and those oranges, and those areas that have changed. Those are those areas that By and large, some of them are regulated basins like the lower part of the Rio Grande, but when you start looking at the San Francisco, the Gila, the Zuni Basin, those and some other basins to the east, those are those unregulated basins. They're starting to see the impact of that upper layers of the groundwater that's been recharged of soil moisture from the great late monsoon we had over most of the state. That's being depleted. So that's what you're seeing here. That's something to watch, is how that stream flow is going to go. Like I said, a lot of basins are doing pretty well right now because of the we're still getting benefits from that great precipitation in 2017. So fire, this has been a question we've been getting here at the National Weather Service, and everyone's looking at drought. We're at that time of year. We're coming up on fire season. So this is hot off the presses from the National Interagency Fire Center. Their seasonal fire potential outlook. They're the agencies that do that. The seasonal outlook for fire, not the National Weather Service, but they are a key partner with us. And on the left, you can see the significant wildland fire potential outlook for March. You can see a large part of New Mexico is in that above normal. That's not saying we're going to have massive wildfires, but saying the probability is above normal that we're going to have a more active season. And then in April and May, all of New Mexico is that. And that they're basing that on looking at current conditions. These are meteorologists and other scientists within the multiple agencies that coordinate with NIFC. So this is not a Weather Service product, but we're getting that question. And so here's the current outlook from the fire weather experts, the predictive, long-term predictive. So above normal is kind of the trend, and that's kind of to be expected with the drought. So let's talk about La Nina in New Mexico. I've mentioned previously, this is what's fueling our current pattern right now, is La Nina. So kind of a quick review, La Nina is colder than normal sea surface temperatures in the equatorial Pacific, and you see kind of an inset map there on the bottom right. We're looking at that Nino 3.4 region. That's kind of the telltale sign. That's the most scientists use that. So that for a La Nina, you need consistent 3-month averages of about 0.5 degrees Celsius below normal. And you can see on the graph on the left, I've just added that red line. That's where we are. So we've got a La Nina solidly in place. It's not a strong La Nina. It's still considered a weak one, but it's firmly in place, meaning that it's very typical conditions. And you see on the top right, that graphic, that's a typical La Nina winter pattern, and that's what we're seeing. The jet stream has been displaced. We tend to see a ridge of high pressure that affects the southwest, producing drier conditions. So we're seeing over most of New Mexico and the southwest, and even parts of Texas and Colorado, a very stereotypical La Nina. So that's our driver right now. So let's look, what does that bring ahead for us? So the next 8 to 14 days, this was issued on February 1st, this morning, the current 8 to 14 day outlook. No surprise for temperatures, looking at above normal probabilities over New Mexico, below normal and precipitation on the right. So that pattern continues. So unfortunately, while there is some hints in the climate system, I'm not going to get into this in this briefing. There are some hints, or maybe a change coming in the 2 to 3 week time frame. Right now, the outlook's not looking too good for a significant precipitation through that period. So how's that going looking out? Now we're in February. This was issued last month. This is our seasonal outlook. Again, no surprise. Above normal chances of above normal temperatures, increased chances of below normal precipitation. So what does that mean for drought? Again, that leads into drought is likely to persist over most of New Mexico and the basins to our north that affect New Mexico, and likely to develop over the southeast part of the state. Actually, since this was issued mid-January, we've seen already some of that southeast, that D0 area just kind of start to wane away. So impacts, what are we seeing right now from the drought? So since the last briefing, we've had 2 new fire restrictions. Currently, Colfax and Mora counties have fire restrictions, and Angel Fire in the village of Ruidoso now have burn restrictions of some sort. We don't set those burn restrictions. Please contact your local authorities or your state or federal land agency that you may be, if you're looking to do any sort of burning or outdoor burning recreation, to check on current impacts. We're starting to see impacts in the agricultural sector. The current USDA ag report indicates that there's been some moving around of livestock, maybe some feeding issues there, and there's starting to be impact to winter wheat. So we're starting to see those impacts. Again, it's been a dormant season in New Mexico by and large, but we're starting to see those. again, the ski resorts have been really impacted from the low snow. Currently, we don't know of any known water restrictions at this time related to the drought. There may be some local ones for various reasons, but currently we're unaware of any water restrictions. So kind of summarizing, again, drought's continuing. We're just not getting the precipitation we need. 100% of the state is some category on the drought monitor. 94% is in moderate or severe drought. 68% is in that severe drought category. And just a dollop is in that extreme drought category, that D3, and that's in Catron County, mainly kind of a bleed over from conditions in Arizona. Snowpack is well below normal at this time. Again, just meteorologically and climatologically, we're running out of time to build significant snowpack accumulation. We'll still get some systems through producing snow, but statistically, we're running out of time. So I'll leave this up for a minute. Here's some links for more information of currently the drought monitor link there. You can get to the current map. The 3 forecast offices that serve the state of New Mexico. You can see current stream flow conditions at our partners at the U.S. Geological Survey. The New Mexico Climate Center at New Mexico State University is an excellent resource for all things New Mexico climate. Our partners at the Western Regional Climate Center in Reno, Nevada, drought.gov. For those interested in current fire conditions and fire outlooks, there are multiple geographic coordination centers. The Southwest Coordination Center we call SWIC is here in Albuquerque, and you can link there to see the current outlooks and fire-related conditions. And, of course, last but not least, the USDA, the National Resource Conservation Service. They do an awesome job of getting us the snow data, and we couldn't do our jobs in the hydrology field without their valuable work. So again, that concludes the New Mexico Drought Status Briefing for February 1st. If you have questions or feedback, or more importantly, drought impacts, please, if you've got, you live outside the Albuquerque metro area, you're in Moore County, you're out in Catron County, please send me photos of impacts and details. That's very valuable for helping us draw those lines and seeing what's really going on in the field. You know the conditions where you are, so I can't reemphasize enough. Please give me a call, send me an email with some pictures of drought impacts. There's my contact information there. So again, thank you for listening, and we appreciate your attention.